Part 3. The Heart of the Smoke. Introduction. The city of Los Angeles was never more than a blur of lights and shadows, a place where the lines between truth and lies blurred into a haze of smoke and mirrors. For Jake Lawson, the detective who had spent years chasing ghosts in the dark corners of this sprawling metropolis, the game had become more dangerous than ever. He had stumbled onto something larger than a simple murder, something that could tear apart the very fabric of the city he called home. And now, standing on the precipice of a war for control, Lawson wasn't sure if he was ready for what lay ahead. Vivian Chase had warned him. Rafe Sanchez wasn't just a kingpin in the cannabis world. He was an architect of a new order, one built on power, manipulation, and fear. And Leo Castellanos' murder was only the opening salvo in a war that would reshape LA forever. But Lawson couldn't turn back now. The truth was out there, hidden in plain sight, and if he wanted to stop Sanchez and prevent the city from slipping deeper into corruption, he had no choice but to push forward. Each step he took led him further into the heart of the smoke, a place where no one was safe, and every ally could be an enemy. The stakes were high, and the players were ruthless. The clock was ticking, and Lawson was running out of time. 1. The Gathering Storm. Jake Lawson had spent most of his life in LA, watching it transform from a city of opportunity to a jungle ruled by shadows. It wasn't the city he had signed up to protect, but over the years, he had grown used to the darkness that lurked just beneath the surface. The rich and powerful had always played their games, and the rest of the city, well, it was just a backdrop. But now, with Rafe Sanchez's rise to power, it seemed like the game was about to change. Lawson sat at his desk, a half-empty bottle of whiskey at his side, staring out the window at the city that seemed so far away. The streets below were alive, but up here in his office, it felt as if the world had stopped moving. His mind was racing, piecing together the information he had gathered over the past few days. Vivian had been right. Sanchez wasn't just some gangster. He was a businessman, a strategist, who played a much bigger game. And if he wasn't stopped, LA would fall into his hands. Vivian had led him to this point. Her past with Leo Castellano had been the key, but now it was clear she was just as entangled in this web as anyone else. She had warned him of Sanchez's ambitions, but Lawson knew that the only way to truly understand the scope of the problem was to go deeper, into the heart of the smoke itself. He had one lead left, the Gilded Lily. Rafe Sanchez's private club was the nexus of his operation, the place where deals were made, alliances were formed, and secrets were buried. It wasn't just a nightclub, it was the heartbeat of everything Sanchez controlled. If Lawson wanted answers, that's where he had to go. Lawson grabbed his coat and stepped out into the night, the city's neon lights casting long shadows on the pavement. There was a chill in the air, a sense of inevitability hanging over him. Whatever came next, he was in it for the long haul, and if he wasn't careful, it would consume him. 2. Inside the smoke. The Gilded Lily was everything Lawson expected it to be. Elegant, sleek, and coated in a veneer of exclusivity. The velvet curtains, the low hum of jazz, the rich scent of cigars in the air, it all felt like a carefully curated world, one that was just a little too perfect. As he entered, the bouncer gave him a nod, a silent acknowledgement that he was allowed in. Inside, The mood was thick with tension. The usual crowd of LA's elite were mingling, but there was a sense of something bigger brewing beneath the surface. Lawson's eyes scanned the room, looking for any sign of Rafe Sanchez. He wasn't sure what to expect. Sanchez was a ghost, a man who operated in the shadows. But as he pushed deeper into the club, he found himself face to face with the man who had started it all. Rafe Sanchez sat in a private booth at the far end of the room, his eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses, his demeanor calm and collected. He was a man of few words, but every movement he made felt deliberate, calculated. As Lawson approached, Sanchez didn't stand up. Instead, he waved a hand, signaling Lawson to sit. "Detective Lawson," Sanchez said, his voice smooth as silk, "I've been expecting you." "Don't pretend you know why I'm here," Lawson replied, sitting down across from him. "I'm here because you've been playing games with the city, and it's time to put an end to it." Sanchez chuckled, taking a sip of his drink. "Games? You think this is just a game?" He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "This is bigger than you, bigger than me. This is about control, detective, about who gets to decide the future of LA. That's your vision, huh? Control it all, every street, every deal, every person?" Lawson's voice was low, but there was no mistaking the venom in his words. Sanchez's smile never wavered. "You're in a city built on smoke and mirrors, Lawson. The only difference is I'm making the mirrors." There was a dangerous edge to Sanchez's words, but Lawson wasn't intimidated. He had been around long enough to know that this was all about power. Sanchez wasn't just trying to control the cannabis market. He was trying to control everything. "You killed Leo Castellano," Lawson said, his voice flat. "You had him murdered." Sanchez's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of something. Was it regret? Guilt? "Leo was a good man," he said, almost as if to himself, "but he was too weak. He couldn't see the bigger picture. He didn't understand what needed to be done." "What's that supposed to mean?" Sanchez leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving Lawson's. "It means that Leo wasn't willing to make the tough calls, and that's why he's dead. He wasn't prepared to sacrifice for the greater good." "Greater good?" Lawson's voice was almost a growl. "You're just a damn dictator, Sanchez. You think you can own this city? You're playing with fire." Sanchez's smile returned, but there was nothing kind about it. "I'm not playing, detective. I'm winning. And you're in my way." The word hung in the air like a threat, and Lawson knew it was time to make a choice. He could walk away, retreat into the shadows of the city, or he could stand his ground and fight for the truth. 3. The betrayal. The days that followed were a blur. Lawson knew he couldn't trust anyone, not even Vivian. She had warned him, yes, but how much of her warning was out of concern for him, and how much was out of her own fear of Sanchez? He had seen the way she looked at him, like she was torn between loyalty to a man she had once loved and the reality of the monster Sanchez had become. It wasn't long before Lawson realized that Sanchez had people everywhere. His influence stretched far beyond the Gilded Lily and the dispensaries he controlled. He had tentacles in the city's political system, in law enforcement, and even in the media. No one was safe. Vivian had called him again asking to meet, but something felt off. Lawson knew he had to tread carefully, but he also knew that this was the only chance to uncover the truth. As he arrived at their meeting spot, a secluded alley near the Gilded Lily, His gut twisted. Vivian was there, but she wasn't alone. Standing beside her was Alvaro Ruiz. "Jake," Vivian said, her voice tight, "I need to tell you something." Before she could speak, Ruiz stepped forward. "It's time you knew the truth, Detective," he said. "Vivian isn't just some innocent bystander in all of this." Lawson's heart sank as he looked between them. What's going on? Vivian's face was pale, her eyes filled with something he couldn't quite read. "Jake, I've been working with Sanchez. I never wanted you to know, but I couldn't keep lying to you." Lawson's mind raced, but his body was frozen. Betrayal, that's what it was. Vivian, the woman he had trusted, had been playing him all along. Ruiz smiled darkly. "Sanchez isn't the only one pulling the strings here. You're just a pawn in a game that's already been decided." Everything Lawson thought he knew about the city, about Vivian, was shattered in that moment. The truth was far darker than he could have ever imagined.